The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in
Hello,
listen-only mode.
and thank you for tuning in to learn more about sororities at Tulane. My name is Liz Schaefer, and I serve as the Director of Fraternity and Sorority Programs here. I'm proud to work with the 42% of full-time undergraduate students who belong to one of our 23 Greek letter social organizations. Our department is part of the Division of Student Affairs, and our staff is dedicated to providing an exceptional fraternity and sorority experience to our students. To name just a few of the things we do, we provide training to chapter and council officers on issues of organizational management, work with national fraternity and sorority staff and local volunteers to support chapters, give guidance on program and event planning, and collaborate with various campus departments to provide resources and programming on topics such as violence prevention, health and wellness, recreation, and academic support. In this tutorial, we will answer the questions we most commonly hear from parents of students who are considering joining a sorority. Of course, if after viewing the tutorial you still have questions, please don't hesitate to contact our staff. Tulane has 12 sororities, each of which is affiliated with a national sorority. The university affiliate groups are called chapters, so you will hear us and your students refer either to their sorority or their chapter. All of these groups are grounded in values centered on sisterhood, scholarship, leadership, and service. It's important to note that these are all private organizations that have individual criteria for membership. The university has no control over these criteria or how the chapters apply them. Each sorority chapter at Tulane belongs to a student-run, staff-advised governing council. The councils are made up of chapters that are similar in size and do similar activities. You can see on your screen the names of each of our sororities and the councils to which they belong. We have 2 multicultural sororities, which average in size at 8 members and belong to our Multicultural Greek Council, or MGC. We have 2 historically black sororities, which average 4 members and are part of our National Pan-Hellenic Council, or NPHC. One of these has a joint charter with nearby Loyola University, meaning that they have members from both schools. And finally, 8 sororities belong to our Panhellenic Council, sometimes known as Pan-Hell. These groups currently average in size at 186 members. All of these sororities have houses, which are owned and managed by either local alumni of the sorority or by the individual sorority's National Housing Corporation. While only a few women live in the houses, the so-called brothel law you may have heard of is an urban legend. Most of the houses were all built as single-family homes and later converted to use by the sororities. So those that do not have a live-in component only house between 3 and 8 women. The only time a member may be required to live in the sorority house is if she eventually serves in a particular chapter office, such as president or treasurer. And living in a sorority house does not exempt a student from the 2-year requirement to live on campus. The sororities primarily use the houses as meeting spaces and a home away from home for their members. Many parents worry about the time commitment that joining a sorority will bring. Like so many things in life, your daughter will get out of a sorority what she puts into it. If she chooses to get involved with committees and events early on, she will spend a bit more time. But on average, most new members should expect to spend 5 to 10 hours per week attending new member education sessions to learn about the organization's history, chapter business meetings, and sisterhood or social events. If your daughter is already involved in one or more other student organizations, her new sorority will view that as a benefit and not a hindrance. Our sororities consider academic achievement to be an essential part of membership. The average GPA of Greek members has been higher than that of non-Greek members for at least the last 15 years, and the sororities compete fiercely with one another for the highest grades. You can view the GPA standings for each organization on our website, greek.tulane.edu, under the About Our Community heading. The costs of sorority membership are listed on your screen. They vary somewhat by council, and the variance is based on a number of factors, including the size of the group, the number and type of activities they plan each year, and whether or not they have a house or sometimes provide meals for members. Regardless, it's important to note that the first semester of membership is more expensive because of one-time new member fees. Your daughter will also pay a Greek membership fee to the university each semester. If she joins a Pan-Hellenic council organization, that fee will be included in the dues she pays to her sorority. But if she joins an NPHC or multicultural sorority, her accounts receivable bill will be charged. The fee covers things in 3 basic categories: educational programming for members, social and community programming, and neighborhood relations. As you are probably aware, the university sets and maintains eligibility requirements of students who wish to join a fraternity or sorority. The requirements are straightforward and are listed on your screen. A couple of important notes, though. First is that we hold hard and fast to the minimum requirements and do not make exceptions to them. That means that if your daughter earns a 2.499 GPA and not a 2.5, she will not be able to participate. It also means that if she completes only 10 hours in the first semester, but Tulane accepted 3 advanced placement credits, she will be able to participate. We take a hard line on the requirements because all our sororities have those same minimums. If we make an exception and allow a student to participate in Panhellenic recruitment, even though her GPA doesn't meet the minimum, none of the sororities would be allowed by their national organization to invite her to membership. So that means we don't make exceptions under any circumstances. Secondly, all potential new members must complete 4 educational requirements before they begin the recruitment or membership intake process. All first-year students, as well as upperclassmen who have indicated an interest in joining a sorority, have been receiving monthly emails about the education requirements. If your student has not yet completed those requirements, please encourage her to contact our graduate assistants at greek@tulane.edu for makeup information. MGC and NPHC sororities bring in new members through a process called membership intake. Typically in early February, the organizations will each host an informational meeting to help prospective members learn about the programs and activities they do. Following the informational, they will accept membership applications and vote on which applicants to invite to membership. Generally, MGC organizations do not require applicants to obtain recommendation letters from graduate or alumni members, but NPHC organizations do require such recommendations. Currently, all 4 of our MGC and NPHC sororities are scheduled to bring in new members in the spring. Now we're going to spend some time talking about the recruitment process used by our Panhellenic Council, as it's the largest and most complex. After many years of holding recruitment over 2 weekends with a week of classes between them, we decided last year to take advantage of the way dates fell on the calendar and hold the entire process in the week before classes began. It was incredibly successful, and so we are continuing with that schedule. While we know some students aren't thrilled about coming back early from winter break, we believe the advantages of completing recruitment before classes start far outweigh any negatives. Potential new members must register for recruitment online. The early registration deadline is Friday, December 8th. After that, registration is open until Wednesday, January 3rd at 5 p.m. Central Time, but incurs a $20 late fee. We will not accept late registrations. The next deadline is Friday, January 5th at 5 p.m. Any academic issues that are preventing a student from participating must be resolved at that time. Examples of these issues are incomplete grades from the first semester, an appeal to a professor for a higher grade, or incoming transfer credit. If your student has a concern about a grade, she should contact her professor as soon as that grade is posted, understanding that professors will be on winter break and may not respond to calls or emails immediately. Because it is often impossible to predict whether your daughter will earn the required 2.5 GPA, we strongly recommend the purchase of refundable airline tickets for her to return to Tulane, as students who are ineligible for recruitment will not be able to move into the residence halls early. On Monday, January 8th at noon, the residence halls will open for women participating in recruitment. We ask that students respect this opening time, as our colleagues in Housing and Residence Life graciously agreed to partner with us and open the halls early. Each recruitment registrant will be charged $40 to move back into her room early, as well as $100 in order to access dining services throughout the days of recruitment. These fees will be billed to your daughter's accounts receivable and are completely non-refundable, even if she withdraws or is released from recruitment. It's important for parents to understand the overall concepts of Panhellenic recruitment. The goal of the National Pan-Hellenic Conference is to achieve parity among all organizations on a given campus. Therefore, recruitment works because it's based on the idea that each of our 8 sororities is a viable option for women who want to join. Your daughter should begin the process with an open mind about joining any of the organizations that invites her to membership, not with her heart set on just 1 or 2. Each day of recruitment, both the potential new members, who we call PNMs, and the sororities rank their preferences. The PNMs will receive a ranking sheet and list the organizations they are most interested in returning to. At the same time, the sororities will vote and determine which PNMs they will invite back. Sororities that have historically been listed as a top preference by PNMs are allowed to invite fewer women back to successive rounds. Our staff, with the assistance of a volunteer recruitment specialist from the National Pan-Hellenic Conference, cross-references the PNM's preferences with the sororities' invitations to produce an individual schedule for each PNM for each successive round. The schedule is listed on your screen. As you can see, during the first round, all P&Ms visit all sororities. But for the successive rounds, they will visit fewer chapters. So the process works like a funnel, with each P&M's options being narrowed down each day. If a chapter doesn't invite a P&M for a particular round, it means that chapter is not interested in her joining their organization, and she will not have the opportunity to join that group. She should instead focus on the groups that did invite her. The process works because P&Ms must visit all the sororities that have invited her on a particular day, even if they are ones she listed lower on her preferences list. This gives the sororities more of a chance to convince the P&Ms that they are a good option for her. The final round of recruitment is called preference, and it is the most serious. After P&Ms attend preference events, during which the sororities will make their final emotional pitches to the P&Ms to join, the P&Ms will rank in preferential order the sororities they visited that night. They will do so using a binding agreement form that is used nationwide. Two very important notes about preference. First, national sorority policies dictate that the period immediately following pref events is called strict silence. P&Ms may not talk to one another or to their peer counselors that night until they have completed their binding agreement. They also may not talk to you until then. So if your daughter likes to talk things through with you before making a decision, we encourage you to spend some time talking with her about how she's feeling that afternoon, which is Saturday, January 13th, before she attends the events. The other important note is about that binding agreement. The agreement, which we explain thoroughly both during recruitment kickoff and on preference night, and which your daughter will initial several times to indicate her understanding, states that if she lists a sorority among her preferences and receives a bid, or a membership invitation, to that sorority, she is bound to them until next January's recruitment. She doesn't have to join that sorority, but she may not join another Pan-Hellenic sorority at Tulane for a year. Please note also that bid day, the day when students learn which sorority they have been matched to, is the day before the Martin Luther King holiday. The university will be closed both that Sunday of bid day and Monday of the King holiday. So if you have post-recruitment questions, our staff will be available to answer them beginning on Tuesday, January 16th. As your daughter goes through recruitment or considers intake, she will likely ask your advice about how to decide which organizations she's most interested in. The most important factor in determining this is the fit she feels and her comfort level with the women in the group. And that's something she won't know until recruitment or the informationals happen. This can be tough if someone in your family is an alumna of one of our organizations, but we really encourage you to let your daughter make her own decision about which group is best for her, especially because chapters of the same organization can be very different on different campuses, and even our chapters here at Tulane change over the years. The next factor to consider plays into the first, and that is how much the organization's values resonate with your daughter. All national sororities were founded on a set of guiding principles, and the members should be able to articulate both the values themselves and how the Tulane chapter's activities reflect those values. Encourage your daughter to ask questions of the members that will help her determine the values that are important to each sorority. You may also wish to check the current disciplinary status of the organizations, which is available on the website of Tulane's Office of Student Conduct. Finally, for those of you whose daughters are participating in Panhellenic recruitment, it's essential to understand that the process all colleges and universities across the country use is one called mutual selection. Mutual selection means that both the potential new member and the sorority must agree that the decision for her to join is mutually acceptable. Note that I didn't say that every P&M will get her first choice, or even her seventh choice. Nor did I say every chapter gets to take all the P&Ms they are most interested in. Instead, it means both parties are okay with the relationship. And that's often a hard distinction for your students to come to grips with. Many Tulane students are very used to being selected for things they want to do, whether that's a team, a performance, or a scholarship. So it's sometimes tough for a woman to deal with not getting invited back to her top choice sororities during recruitment. As I mentioned earlier, sororities that have historically been listed as a top preference by many P&Ms are allowed to invite fewer women back to successive recruitment rounds. In recent years, that has meant that some of the sororities have only been allowed to invite back 40% or 50% of P&Ms after the first round, and then only 60 to 70% of those women in the following rounds. So we ask that you help your daughter manage her expectations about the process in advance, talking with her over the next few weeks about what her goals for joining a sorority are, and about the fact that not being invited back to her perceived top choice will not negatively impact her time at Tulane. P&Ms tend to catastrophize the situation when they aren't invited back to a chapter they've had their hearts set on. And while that's totally an understandable reaction in the moment, I assure you that each year we have hundreds of students who deal with the disappointment of not being invited back by a group they wanted. We're very experienced in working with students who experience disappointment during recruitment and helping them develop the resiliency it takes to move past that disappointment. The vast majority of those continue in the recruitment process, join a sorority, and realize that they're just as happy in their new group as they would have been in the one they thought they wanted to join initially. A few general notes about Panhellenic recruitment. Tulane is not a campus that relies heavily on recommendations from alumni members. If a close friend or family member would like to submit a recommendation on your daughter's behalf, she should go to the website of her national sorority and find the standard form the organization suggests. If that form is to be mailed rather than submitted online, or if the recommender is uncomfortable with an online submission, the addresses for all the chapters are available on our website. We talk a lot with P&Ms about maximizing their options during recruitment. This means being polite during all events, even to women in chapters they aren't that interested in, and keeping an open mind throughout the process. Though we can't guarantee that every student who participates in recruitment will receive a bid, I can tell you that those who don't get their hearts set on one particular chapter are far more likely to receive a bid. Finally, detailed information about the schedule for recruitment and what your daughter should wear each day is available on our website. She will be doing a lot of walking and standing during recruitment week, so we encourage you to convince her to wear comfortable shoes. While the overwhelming majority of students who want to join a sorority at Tulane are able to, sometimes it doesn't work out. The statistics from last year's Pan-Hellenic recruitment are on your screen. A small percentage of those women who didn't complete recruitment were released from the process, meaning that at some point none of the chapters decided to invite them back. But the majority voluntarily withdrew from the process, primarily because they were dissatisfied with the sorority options available to them as recruitment went on. Regardless, we want you to be aware of the resources that are available for these women. Professional staff within our Department of Housing and Residence Life coordinate follow-up with each of the P&Ms who leave the process, whether voluntarily or involuntarily. Generally, that means that the student's resident advisor will check on her in person by the next day. Depending on how the student reacts, the RA may also ask a professional staff member to check in as well. Additionally, we work with our colleagues in other student affairs departments to make sure other options for campus involvement are available shortly after recruitment. The Spring Activities Expo is scheduled for Friday, January 26th, and attending is a great way to learn about other student organizations on campus that can fill the void if your daughter is having a hard time watching her floor mates participate in sorority activities. And finally, it's important to know that not all Tulane students join sororities in the spring of their first year. If your daughter is ineligible to participate this year, or if she withdraws or is released, she can certainly go through recruitment next spring. Shifting gears a bit, I want to talk a little about alcohol. You've undoubtedly seen the recent news stories about the tragic deaths of fraternity members over the last few months. While all those stories were about men, it's important to note that women are not isolated from the issues related to alcohol. Many of the most serious issues facing college women, from crime to sexual assault to hazing, are in some way related to alcohol. You are also likely aware that President Mike Fitz and Board of Tulane Chair Doug Hertz recently released a letter calling for the university community to change the campus's culture around alcohol use. We are fortunate that more than 18 months ago, our VP for Student Affairs convened a steering committee comprised of Tulane board members, senior administrators, faculty, staff, and alumni chapter advisors to create a long-range plan for Greek life here at Tulane. That committee has recently shifted its work to focus on ways the Greek community can lead the way in changing the alcohol culture here. Concurrently, our student leaders have been working with us to make improvements from the inside. Their efforts have resulted in improvements to our potential new member education series and new initiatives to limit overconsumption of alcohol at fraternity parties. For those of you whose students do join the Greek community, we want to spend some time talking about hazing prevention. The university's definition of hazing is on your screen. Students joining sororities should understand that their organizations can be held responsible for violating the hazing policy, even if the new members willingly participate in an activity that the university deems inappropriate. Experts have identified 3 general categories of hazing activities. The first is subtle hazing. This includes making new members perform tasks that older members don't have to perform. For example, cleaning up after a meal at the chapter house. Subtle hazing can also include things like making new members, quote, earn the right to wear organization insignia. Next is harassment hazing. This may include assigning new members to perform pranks or wear silly clothing. The final type of hazing is violent hazing. This type includes some of the sensational acts you may hear about in media reports: kidnapping new members, physical abuse, paddling, and forced alcohol consumption. At Tulane, hazing among our sorority women is less common than it is among our fraternity men. However, when it does occur, subtle hazing and harassment hazing are the most common forms. Pressure to consume alcohol is more common than actual forced drinking, but it is an issue nonetheless. One thing we try to drill into the minds of our students is that there is often a very slippery slope involved if they engage in so-called lower order hazing. They often don't know the physical and mental health histories of their new members. For example, pressured drinking can cause serious issues for a new member with a history of depression and anxiety. Another issue is that within an organization, different people can have very different views of what constitutes hazing. What seems harmless to some can seem completely inappropriate and dangerous to others. In the last 3 years, our Student Conduct Office has investigated 2 hazing cases involving sororities. One happened in the spring of 2015 when our Alpha Epsilon Phi chapter pled responsible to violating the drug and hazing policies. The sorority was suspended and therefore totally dormant in 2015-16. However, they successfully completed the terms of their suspension, made wholesale changes to the way they operate, and returned to active status last fall, though they remain on a warning period through the end of this spring. The other case was last spring when our Alpha Delta Pi chapter also pled responsible to violating the drug and hazing policies. Those charges were somewhat less serious than those against AE Phi, and therefore the organization was allowed to remain active, though they are on probation throughout this spring. Both groups are otherwise functioning normally, their activities are not restricted, and their members are working hard to create chapters we can all be proud of again. If at any point during your daughter's time in a sorority you have questions about whether she or a friend in a fraternity or sorority is being hazed, there are several resources you can consult. Of course, you can always call and speak to a member of our staff. If you're uncomfortable doing that, you may file an online report at the website tulane.edu/concerns, or you may leave a message on our hazing hotline at 504-862-3111. If you make an online report or call to ask a question, you can ask to remain anonymous. But I implore you to give us your contact information so we can contact you with follow-up questions. Parents are often concerned about reporting because they don't want their student to know it was they who called. As a parent myself, I completely understand that concern. However, I assure you that in my 8 years at Tulane, I have never revealed the source of a report about hazing. Nothing is more frustrating and concerning to us than receiving a report that something is happening that shouldn't be, but not having enough information to stop that behavior. Finally, there's a great deal of information available online for parents who want to know more. A list of websites, in addition to greek.tulane.edu, is on your screen, and I encourage you to consult those. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you have questions that were not answered by this tutorial, please feel free to contact us. We look forward to seeing your daughters in the spring.